Welcome to Fostering Bridges, a podcast dedicated to uplifting, supporting, and empowering foster, adoptive, and kinship parents.
Well, today I'm talking with Amy Bobbitt with MCH Family Outreach. How are you doing today, Amy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Love getting the chance to make all these calls and talk to people about the foster care world and, what their take on it is. And so How long have you and your family been involved with foster care?
So I have worked for MCH Family Outreach in foster care for 6 years. I'm currently the foster home developer here in our Tyler office, and so I license foster homes to be foster to adopt families. So I've been doing that for about 6 years.
Now, Texas is unique in the way that they certify foster homes. They have agencies that do that, whereas many states, such as Oregon, have the state themselves certify them. So can you talk to me about what are certifying agencies, what is their role, and how are they different from one another?
Yeah, so we are a child placing agency, which is a private organization that licenses and screens foster homes. We act as a bridge between children who are in need of care and foster families who are looking for a foster placement. So child placing agencies recruit families, and then we go through a licensure and a screening process to have these families licensed with us, and then they would be open for placement.
Now, what distinguishes one agency from another? Like how are they different? Why would someone choose one versus a different one?
Through Texas, we all have to abide by what is called the minimum standards, which is the basic rules and regulations of child placing agencies in Texas. But the differences between certain agencies, like MCH, is basic level of care to moderate level of care. Other agencies go to a higher level of care for children who have more intense behavioral needs or children who have specialized medical needs, something like that. So that can be a determining factor on what agency would be a better fit for a family. Our agency here at MCH Family Outreach is a faith-based organization, so that's important to some families. I think a lot of them are faith-based, but I'm not sure. I mean, there's others that are not necessarily.
You guys, in addition to certifying from the beginning, you walk with them throughout the placements, right?
Yes, we do. We have case management services. So once they have been licensed and they're an official foster home, they have a case manager that walks with them through the whole process. As soon as they get a child in the home, they'll have another case manager that helps them with the case of the child. So they're definitely not left alone once they're licensed.
In choosing an agency, I would imagine that rapport with whoever your certifier or your caseworker is would be an important component of that, right?
Yes, that's right. I think that one thing that MCH does really, really well is that we are here to support the foster families. We're not just here only to find help for foster children, but the foster families are the ones that are doing the really hard work 24/7 around the clock. So they absolutely need to have support from not only the community, but for sure the agency that they're licensed with.
When you say support, what does that mean? What is that? Somebody to call if they're having a tough time? Is that tangible needs? What all is included in the idea of support for a foster family?
Yeah, we offer all kinds of support. Tangible needs, if a family has a placement that is in need of specific tools or supplies or anything that's going to help that child. For instance, we had one kiddo who was having some balancing issues. He was 2, and so our agency got him some balance strengthening toys Does that make sense? We're going over
It does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Also, sometimes weighted blankets are really great for kids who are struggling. And so if somebody needs something like that and it's just an added expense, we are very happy to help them supply their home with things that they need. We also have case management that comes into the home every month to help them abide by those minimum standards that we have to abide by as a CPA. It's a very, very long list of rules and regulations, so having a case manager come and monitor that is much easier for them so they don't have to keep up with it.
Yeah, I have to confess, in 16 years of foster care, I don't miss those visits. I miss the chats with the caseworkers because they're always wonderful. But,
for sure.
Even after having done that for year after year, and I could have my certifier walk in the house, and I know every single thing they're going to check. I know everything's in order, but just knowing that you're under that microscope is like, you just get a little anxiety about it,
I know,
but
and I have
cool.
people. Yeah, I have people that say, okay, well, my house is a mess, there's laundry on the couch, and I'm like, we're not looking for perfect, clean homes. We're looking for safe, nurturing homes, and that's literally all that I'm looking for when I come here. We want homes that are lived in. I mean, we want the foster care is a temporary placement for the kids, but that's just a temporary family and a lifestyle for the children who are displaced from their own families. So we definitely are not looking for perfect homes.
The first placement we ever had, which, thank you, Jesus, we got to adopt her as well. But just before that, we were nervous and going, we have one child. Should we really do foster care when we live in a small apartment? And I remember one day my wife and I were looking at each other and we came to this realization of like, wait a minute, if this apartment is good enough for our biological kid, it should be good enough for this kid in desperate need of a place to stay. What's our excuse? Let's do this.
Yes, for sure.
So,
and
so it's
the
something.
Minimum standard for a foster child is not a lot of space. So I've had several people come through the licensure process that are in apartments, and that's not a problem at all, just for future reference.
Right, and it's something that I think it's natural for people to be nervous about those visits, but they're really not a big deal. And it is nice to have a caseworker who can walk with you through that and say, hey, they're not there to say, gotcha. They're there to say, hey, how can we correct anything that we need to fix? So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I really love to get to know my families. We all become one big family. We're doing life with these people, and we during the interview process, we'll probably talk about in a few minutes, but I get to know my foster families so well, and I feel at the end of the process like I've known them for years and years, and so just building that rapport and that relationship with them is just an extra bonus to my job. I just really love it.
Like I said, I love the conversations with our caseworkers over the years. I remember one time they looked at one of the forms we had and they said, wait a minute, there's a discrepancy in the way you guys answered this. I'm like, what? We should have answered everything the same, you would think. And he says, one of you think you moved in the last year and one of you thinks you didn't. And it was because we would relocate temporarily for some work I was doing. It was like, I didn't count that as a move. My wife did. But it was great. These workers, they got to know everything about us, but in a good, positive, relational way.
Yes, for sure.
So yeah, let's talk about that next step. You're a foster home developer. Somebody says, I want to become a foster parent. What's the first thing they do?
Yeah, so the very first thing they do for MCH, I'll speak to my agency since I know for sure, and agencies are very similar, but they might differ in a few specifics. So for MCH, the first thing that someone would need to do is sign up for an orientation, which is an informational meeting that we do virtually. Usually we can do it in person if they would prefer. And I just give them a whole presentation about what foster care is, what adoption is, and then what MCH as an agency is. They can ask all the questions. That's where I show them where the guidelines to become a foster parent are. And it's the very first thing that they need to do.
Does orientation have some screeners?
Like I said, I work at the Tyler office, So someone needs to reside within a 60-mile radius from our office. So we don't just license homes in Tyler. We do a 60-mile radius of East Texas. A person has to have either a high school diploma or a GED. They need to be at least 21 years old. They have to be in good health with no restrictions that would limit their child caring responsibilities. They'd have to have sufficient income to meet their own family's needs, plus take on the cost of extra child. Sometimes people get nervous about that part. We're not looking for wealthy people, but we just want to make sure that someone is not expecting compensation to support themselves by fostering.
Right. It's important to make sure that they're not dependent on the stipend that they might receive for the foster care, because it's never a guarantee when they do or don't have a child in their house. So if they're if the child leaves, that's an issue. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Okay, so they've gone to orientation. From this point, how long is the process, and what's involved in that process?
Yeah, so after orientation, and that's just an information meeting, so that's not them signing up. If they do decide they do want to continue with the process and they want to go with MCH, we would give them an application to fill out. That's going to be all the information to run their background checks. It's going to be a lot of background, a questionnaire of their history and their own life and things like that. And then once they complete that application, which is several pages long, they would give me that back, email it back to me, and we would run their background checks. And as soon as those are passed and become eligible, we can go ahead and start the long training process. Typically, the licensure process, we say, is 3 to 6 months. That just depends on how fast the trainings go. Sometimes families are gung-ho and they're ready to start, and so they get their trainings knocked out super quick. Other times, life happens and things come up, and so they're like, we need to push pause on this for a little while, and then we'll just get back to you when we want to continue. And so that's totally fine too. So
now, those trainings, are those trainings generally, I would imagine they're designed around the workday. And so is it like a couple of times a week for 12 weeks, or what's kind of the generic of that?
Yeah, so there's several different types of trainings. So there's going to be some online trainings that are issued by the state. Those are self-paced, so they can do those anytime. That's just an online training they do. And then the MCH training that we facilitate here, there's about 12 sessions that we typically do virtually. There's a few of them that are in person, but those are going to be the whole long training of being certified as a licensed foster home. So that's, they are typically once a week. We just got a new training color. I think they're going to be on Mondays, and they're from 6 to 8 p.m. Most of our families, everybody works. So if somebody can do a training during the day, I'm happy to do that for them. But most of the time they're done after hours because everybody's at work. So a Monday from 6 to 8 is super fun. We're not yawning through the training at all, but.
Yep. If someone is super gung-ho, they go in, they get through all their trainings. Is it still a bit of a waiting to get their home study done, or can that be done fairly quick, or is that something that slows down the process as well?
Yeah, the home study is something, it's a big, long document that I write, and I'm working on that whole home study throughout the process. So, for instance, you're not going to finish training and then I start the home study. In the middle of all the trainings, I'm going to be doing interviews with the parents. If there's children 3 and up in the home, I'll do interviews with them, and we'll just be working together during that whole time. So about 5 or 6 months is typically a good estimate of when you can be completely licensed.
Any pointers on, for families, if they're considering this, and what children they should or shouldn't be open to based off of their family dynamic?
Yeah, well, they have the opportunity to give me their preference on age. You have a preference on gender. You can have a preference on race, religion, anything like that. So you can specify what children you would like to have in your home. Now, I will say the more specific your preferences are, the longer you may wait for a placement. If families are interested in doing younger children or newborns, they will be able to say, that's the age range that we want. MCH licenses homes for 0 to 17 years old. So sometimes you might be licensed for 0 to 17, but that doesn't mean that you have to have a child in that age range in your home. You can make your preference. In the home study is what I would put. They are interested in fostering babies, or they're interested in fostering 4 to 8-year-olds, or whatever it is for that particular family.
Now, I've always encouraged people not to be overly selective, but to truly take a look at your family dynamic and figure out what ages work and which ones don't. For example, if you send all your kids are teenagers and you send them all off to school during the day, and you expect them to go off to school because you're going off to work, you probably don't want a 2-year-old who's at home all day. And so You might say, hey, I prefer teenagers,
For sure.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Maybe you are already home with little ones, and so adding another little one is, something that works well with your family dynamic. And so I've encouraged people, have some of those selection things because you want it to work with your family dynamic,
For sure.
Last question here is, do you have any just words of wisdom for someone who may hear this and think, maybe I want to be a foster parent? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say do it and call me. But I would just say, it is a very scary, it can seem very overwhelming, and sometimes it will be overwhelming, but it is such a wonderful way to share the gospel and to be the hands and feet of Christ. It's really hard, and I'll never sugarcoat in my trainings. I do not pretend like this is all, super easy and it's going to be so great, because it will be great and you will be blessed and your whole family will be blessed, but it's very heart-wrenching also. And so I always want to remind my families when they first start out that foster care is temporary. We want the families to be reunified. That's what the goal is. It doesn't always happen that way, and that adoption is an opportunity sometimes, and adoption is a wonderful thing. But I would just say pray about it and don't let the imperfections of it and the scariness of it stop you.
That's a good word. I appreciate that. You mentioned if somebody wants to move forward or is interested to call you. And so Miss Amy Bobbitt, foster home developer, how does somebody get a hold of you?
Yes, you can call the office, MCH Family Outreach, at 903-509-1171.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Fostering Bridges. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights, encouragement, and a reminder that you're not alone on this journey. If you found value in this episode, please share it with someone who might need it, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. Remember, building bridges in our families, our communities, and ourselves is a continuous journey. Until next time, take care and keep fostering those bridges.